put my contact information in the chat. If anybody ever needs to get a hold of me. All right, today we're going to be talking about Rule 6, which is pitching. And get my book here, get the right one. So there's a lot of, it's on page 42 of your 2026 rule book. They took the term hybrid out of the book a couple years ago, but they didn't change. Well, the rule did change a little bit, but it's still there. The pitcher has to pitch from either the windup or the set. He can't do from both. So if he's in the set, he can't take that rocker step or wind up or do anything like that. So Rule 611, pitcher shall pitch while facing the batter from either a windup or a set position, and the position of the pitcher's feet determine which one he's in. So bottom line is now all we're looking for, used to be we had to look and see where the free foot was and all that. Now all we're looking for is to see if his pivot foot, which for a right-handed batter, the pivot foot would be the right foot. It's the one that he pushes off from. It has to be parallel to the rubber. So parallel meaning like railroad tracks, perpendicular meaning like an X. The problem that we have is that these pitchers want to be minutely perpendicular, and we'd have to get out there with a slide rule to tell if they're parallel or not. So to help you determine whether he's parallel, because you can look at it and it'll look like he's parallel. Look when he takes his rocker step with the free foot. If he lifts his pivot foot and adjusts it, then assume that he was not parallel. If he just leaves it there, then bang it for an illegal pitch, or with runners on for a balk. So that kind of helps you, given that most of our games at the high school level are two-man. It's very hard to see because, you can see it when there's nobody on, but when you're in the middle, you certainly can't really see that too well. So just use that as a gauge. Look and see if he readjusts the pivot foot. So the pivot foot must be in contact with the plate. Says the pitcher will be considered to be in the set position when the pivot foot is in contact with or directly in front of and parallel to the pitcher's plate. So again, this is high school baseball. Not all of our fields are pristine. They don't have grounds crews other than themselves. A lot of times there's a big hole in front of the rubber, and you'll have a base coach who has a much better view of that than you do, complaining that the guy's not touching the rubber. Okay, so I'm not going to make him stand in that hole. Now, I'm not going to let him be 6 inches in front of it, but by rule, he says in contact with or directly in front of. So we're not going to go out there and, again, get out our slide rule and try to determine whether the guy is a millimeter in front of the rubber. And I'm not going to make a guy stand in a hole, especially if it's the home coach complaining about it. we are in charge of the grounds crew when once we have accepted lineups. So if he really wants to be a butt, he will meet the other side of Bill, and I might just call time and say, okay, fine, get your grounds crew out here, bring some mound clay out here, and we're gonna fix the mound. Um, I've never done that, but if a guy just really got on my nerves, I certainly would and could. And there's not a darn thing he could say about it because by rule, that's, I have that authority. But, the other thing is to tell him, hey, I'm not going to make him stand in that hole. And by rule, he has to be on or directly in front. So if he's an inch and a half in front of the rubber, I ain't picking that booger. All right. The pitching regulations begin when the pitcher intentionally contacts the pitcher's plate. Not when he just, happens to brush up against it, or if he's, walking past, or anything like that. When he intentionally contacts the pitcher's plate. So how do you know when it's intentional? It's up to you. It's your judgment. Like I say all the time about judgment, you can't be wrong. You can have really crappy judgment, but you can't be wrong when it's judgment. So you can turn your shoulders from the set position before you have come set. And I don't like the wording that they use in this. I think it could really be cleaned up a lot. You cannot turn the shoulders from the windup. So keep that in mind. Turning the shoulders from the windup would be a balk. But from the set position before coming set. So in other words, while in the stretch, or maybe you haven't stretched yet, but before the hands are together, turning the shoulders is not illegal. Turning the shoulders is only illegal after the hands are together. In fact, it says, turning the shoulders after bringing the hands together during or after the stretch is a balk. There you go. I don't know how you would have your hands together in the stretch, because at that point, if you move, you're going to commit a balk. But anyway. Also a quick pitch. So what is a quick pitch? Pitching quickly is a good thing. I mean, yeah, keep the game moving. But pitching quickly is not a quick pitch. A quick pitch is a pitch that is in an attempt to catch a batter off balance. So, if they do that, again, your judgment, bang it, grab that balk, or illegal pitch. But, just know that just because he's pitching quickly doesn't mean that it's a quick pitch. You may have to slow him down a little bit, but if he's just trying to get on the mound, get his sign, get ready, throw the ball, I mean, I would love it if every pitcher would do that. So I don't want to discourage that as long as the batter is ready. All right. The catcher shall have both feet in the catcher's box at the time of the pitch. Well, that's not something I'm going to be looking at unless it's really obvious. And I'm not talking about a catcher, I don't like it, but the new style is to kick one foot out or whatever, and then gets in my way and trips me and scuffs up my plate shoes. I'm not looking at that. But if he is stepping out on a pitch out or something like that before the time of the pitch, so before the pitcher has started his motion. Remember, the time of the pitch is not when the ball leaves the pitcher's hand. The time of the pitch is when he starts any motion which commits him to the plate. So, most catchers are not going to step out that early on a pitch out, but again, we have all levels of skill and baseball IQ, so maybe some of them will. So that's the only time I'm really worrying about that. The catcher's box is 43 inches wide. A lot of times that catcher's box is gone by the third inning. Um, so just use your best judgment. This is not a booger I'm looking to pick, like I said, unless it's just an egregious violation where he's trying to gain an advantage. All right. If the pitcher is ambidextrous, the umpire shall require the pitcher to face a batter as either a left-handed pitcher or a right-handed pitcher, but not both. So, does he have to say righty, lefty? No, just look at which hand he's got the glove on. He's not going to pitch the ball out of the hand with the glove on. So if he's got one of those six-finger gloves, when the batter steps in and when he gets on the rubber and he's got the ball in his hand, that's the hand he has to pitch with. It's not an official declaration. I mean, he can, but he is indicating by which hand he has the glove on, and then you just make him stick with that one throughout the at bat. The batter can switch. Okay, the batter can change. The batter can come up there. He's been pitching righty the whole time. The batter steps in the box and says, "Oh, wait a minute, he's going to pitch as a lefty. I think I will change to the other side." If he's smart, he will either ask for time, that would be the ideal thing, or he will step out of the box and go around behind. If he steps from one box to the other, stepping across the plate, he is out. No pitch needs to be thrown. There is no warning. That's just an out. So if you ever happen to have a game that's totally out of hand and a team is trying to find ways to give up outs, that's a great one because there's no way the defense can screw it up. They don't have to even throw the ball. Just mention to the coach if the subject comes up, mention to the coach, hey, just have your batter step from one box to the other once the pitcher is on the rubber in possession of the baseball, and I'll take it from there. Anyway, so let's look at our case book, page 51. No, page 50, and I don't really know why this is in this section. It seems to be out of place, but we're going to talk about it. On page 50, 611, situation C, a pitch that hits the ground and then bounces through the strike zone is a ball unless the batter strikes at it. So remember this, a pitch that bounces in front of the plate can be anything that any other pitch can be except a called strike. Difference between a called strike and a swinging strike. Obviously, a swinging strike is one the batter swings at. A called strike is one that he did not swing at, but you deem to have met all the requirements of a strike. Even if the pitch bounces in front of the plate, goes right through the middle of the zone, the catcher sticks it, you cannot call it a strike. It might have been the best pitch that the batter had a chance to hit the whole game, but it's still not a strike if he didn't swing at it. If he does swing at it, then it can be a strike. It can be hit for a fair ball. It can be hit for a foul ball. But it also, if it is the third strike and the batter does swing at it, even if the catcher sticks it and holds it, it is still an uncaught third strike, commonly referred to as a drop third strike, because it did not go straight from the pitcher's hand to the catcher's mitt in flight and then be securely held. So, it is a drop third strike if it bounces, even if the catcher holds it, assuming that the batter swings at it. Again, cannot be a called strike. All right, so Article 2. From the windup position, the pitcher is not restricted as to how he will hold the ball. He can have the ball in his glove, in his hand, by his side. I mean, I guess he could have it over his head. I don't know. It says he's not restricted, so I don't know that they would do some of the silly stuff, but anyway, the pitcher is not limited to. I'm sorry, the pitcher is limited to not more than 2 pumps or rotations. Well, we don't really see that anymore. That's a throwback to the Satchel Paige era. But if we look on page 51, 612, situation B, what is meant by a pump or rotation? A pump or rotation is a movement of the arms by a pitcher when in the windup, immediately prior to delivering a pitch to the batter. The pump is an alternate downward and upward motion, so like this, of the arms, generally terminated by placing both hands together. A rotation is a circular movement of the pitching arm immediately prior to delivering the pitch during the windup position. I mean, I haven't seen a pitcher do a loop-de-loop before he pitches ever in my career, but I mean, he can't do it more than a couple times. The rules limit a pitcher to not more than 2 pumps or rotations when using the windup position. There you go. I don't think that's really going to become an issue in your games. I just thought that you might enjoy knowing what the heck they meant by that. All right, so after the pitcher starts the movement to pitch, the pitcher must continue the motion without interruption or alteration. So what do we mean by interruption or alteration? Oftentimes, you hear people say incorrectly that he has to use the same motion every time, or that's an alteration, or if he's doing something that if he does something the same way every time, if he does it every time, it can't be a balk. Well, both of those statements are wrong. If he commits a balk and does it every time, he just commits a lot of balks. And hopefully you will call it the first time and he'll stop that. But, a balk is a balk, whether he does it once or 100 times. And then, the pitcher does not have to, he could use a little bit different motion and different timing every single pitch, and that's totally legal. His job is to deceive the batter and the runners. So don't get hung up in that trap either. Okay. So, he can step off the pitcher's plate at any point before starting his motion. He has to step off with this pivot foot first. So, that's going to be the foot opposite of his glove hand, the one, on the same side where the ball is. So just make sure that, that you're seeing that right, because you need to be looking for it whenever he steps off. You need to make sure which foot he steps off with. And when it comes to calling balks, you don't have to be, Flash Gordon. You can wait and make sure of what you saw, take a breath, and then call it. If he steps off with the wrong foot, you say, wait, hold on. Yeah, that was the wrong foot. Yeah, that's a balk. That's okay. It doesn't have to be instantaneous. Now, coaches generally are going to yell, that's a balk, immediately, because there's no downside to them. It doesn't matter if they're wrong. It does matter if we're wrong. So you need to take your time and make sure of what you see. And then you might tell the coach, hey, give me a chance. I'll call it. You just sit over there and, point left and collect batting gloves. Probably don't see that. All right. So, but what he cannot do from the windup is a jump turn, because you cannot, in high school baseball, you cannot pick from the windup. So if he's in the windup, he has only 2 options: pitch or step off. And if he steps off, he has to do it legally with the pivot foot first. Once his foot is on the ground, behind the rubber, then he can separate his hands, throw to a base or whatever, but he cannot do a jump turn. Now he may lift his non-pivot foot in a step forward, a step sideways, or a step backward and a step forward, but he shall not otherwise lift either foot. I had an interesting situation yesterday in a game where the pitcher would lift his heel of his pivot foot before, just as he was starting his motion. The thing is, he was doing it from the set, and it's not illegal in the set. It's stupid, because if he had ever tried to pick after lifting his heel, I was going to balk him, but he never did. It's extra stupid because he's just telegraphing that he's pitching to the base runners. I mean, I'd be stealing on him all day long. Because he's giving you an advantage, but the other team didn't pick up on it. They actually did. Their pitching coach asked me, as the other coach was out there replacing him, he asked me about it. I'm like, dude, he's been pitching for 3 innings. You didn't think to ask me before? It doesn't do you any good. Now he's out of the game. Anyway, whole different story. All right. Article 3. For the set position, the pitcher shall have the ball in either the glove hand or the pitching hand. The pitching hand shall be down at the pitcher's side or behind the pitcher's back. So now he can do the old, get in a crouch and have the ball hanging, have the hand out front. It can't be swinging, though. We'll get to that in a minute. But that's considered to be down by his side. It's clearly visible and all of that. But he can't be, I don't know where else he would put his hand. He can't have it across his, in front of his body or anything like that. And then he has to come set, to go to the set position without interruption and in one continuous motion. So if he starts to come up and then goes back down, that's a balk. It's or an illegal pitch if there's nobody on. And here is now we get to the thing that is the most common balk in all of baseball at every level, and that is the no-stop balk. The pitcher shall come to a complete and discernible stop, parentheses, a change of direction is not considered an acceptable stop. That came about because some aerospace engineer, probably did the math on it. And yes, technically there is no way to go down and back up without having stopped at some point in there for a microsecond. But for the purpose of this rule, we don't consider that a stop. So he has to come to a complete and discernible stop. Discernible by who? By you. Nobody else's opinion matters. And we really do a very bad job of enforcing this throughout high school baseball especially. Just call it early. If you will grab it early, when it's, you're sending a runner from first to second, they'll stop. But a lot of them are going to do it until you call it on them. They know they're doing it, and they're doing it to try to, keep the runner from getting to get a good lead. So call it. Grow a pair. Don't be scared when you see a balk. Call it. And, if he keeps doing it, keep calling it. They'll eventually stop or replace him. I really don't care which. But, make sure that he comes to a complete stop. he can natural preliminary motion such as only one stretch may be made. Well, like I said, if he's in his stretch, then he comes up and then tries to go back down again. That was a balk because he didn't come set with a complete in one complete motion. All right, let's look at. Well, let me tell you first. So the pitcher's foot must be in or partially within the 24-inch length of the pitcher's plate. Years ago, our rules required his entire foot to be completely within the 24 inches. They changed that rule, thankfully. Now guys can work, as long as a toe is in front of the rubber, then he's good. So let's look at page 52A. Well, wait a minute. I don't know why I've got that marked there in that spot, but anyway, 51A says that with nobody on base, F1 starts the windup or preliminary motion and the ball slips from his hand. With nobody on, right, there is no infraction provided he delivers a pitch within 20 seconds after having received the ball. So there are some do-overs in baseball, very few, but that's one of them. If there's nobody on and the ball slips out of his hand, he can go get it, get back on the rubber, deliver a pitch, within 20 seconds of when he initially got the ball back from the catcher, and it's nothing. If the ball crosses the foul line, it's a ball because that's considered a pitch, even though it was a really bad one. If there's runners on, it's a balk with a K, regardless of how quickly he can go grab the ball. With runners on, if the ball does pass the foul line, then it is a ball because, again, it was a very bad pitch. If he drops it during his delivery of the ball, he's gone through his windup or his pitching motion, and the ball slips. If it just falls out of his hand, you're just going to grab the ball. I've never seen one be dropped and roll all the way across the foul line. Again, if the pitcher is going to disengage, he must first step clearly backward off the pitcher's plate with the pivot foot first. After the pitcher has placed pivot foot on the ground clearly behind the plate, the pitcher then has the right to throw or feint to a base, same as any other fielder. So we give them a little bit of grace. They're really not supposed to separate their hands until the foot hits the ground behind the rubber. But we all know that they separate their hands as their foot's going back, and that's just become an accepted practice that we just, leave alone. So it is what it is. You would be right within the rules to call that a balk, but your game may not be very fun after that. All right. I'm going to skip that. Let's look at page 53B in the case book. I'm sorry, page 53, situation B. Left-handed F1 assumes a set position with R1. F1 steps back off the pitcher's plate with the pivot foot and throws to first base without stepping to the base. This is legal because he is a fielder. Probably a bad throw, but if he's going to pick while engaged with the rubber, he has to gain distance and direction to the base that he's throwing to the base, not to the fielder, to the base. If he's stepped off, he's just a fielder. He can do whatever he wants. He can fake over there. Uh, all right. So the penalty for all of the above there, the ball is dead immediately when an illegal pitch occurs. If there's no runner, a ball is awarded to the batter. If there's a runner, it's a balk. Article 4. Each legal pitch shall be declared as a strike, ball, fair, blah, blah, blah. A pitch dropped during delivery which crosses a foul line shall be called a ball. Otherwise, it will be called no pitch. A pitch dropped during delivery with at least one runner on base would be a balk if it does not cross the foul line. So there you go with what I said just a minute ago. All right. Now, 6-2, infractions by the pitcher. These are your balks. Illegal acts include applying a foreign substance to the ball. So what is a foreign substance? Well, obviously spider tack, pine tar, anything like that would be, but so is saliva. If he goes to his mouth and then goes straight to the ball. Now we have a specific rule for that. We'll get to it in a minute. But the most common one is dirt. The pitcher cannot, and we've all seen it. He can't get a baseball, bend down, rub it in the dirt, and if he does, he's applying a foreign substance to the ball. So say time, throw that ball out, and give him a new baseball. So you can't do that. Now the reality is, we can rub dirt on a baseball. In fact, I have rubbing mud, but we cannot let players do it. What he can do is he can bend down, get a handful of dirt in his hands, rub the dirt into his hands, drop the dirt. Now, we all know that he's still going to have dirt on his hands. But he can then take the ball and rub the ball. He just can't apply dirt to it. I know it's picking hairs, but splitting hairs rather. But that's the rule. Spitting on the ball or the glove. So if he spits in his glove, he can't immediately throw the ball in there. He just transferred it from the glove to the ball. Don't really see that a whole lot anymore. That was a thing in the 70s and 80s. Rubbing the ball on the glove, clothing, or person if the act defaces the ball. Okay? That's the key. You will see him a lot of times, he'll rub the ball on his pants. Usually he's gotten the ball back and it's got some dirt on or scuff on it. He's wiping it off. If the act defaces the ball, that's illegal. If it doesn't, it's not. How do you know? You use your judgment. All right, discoloring the ball with dirt. There you go. He can't rub dirt on the baseball. Bringing the pitching hand in contact with the mouth without distinctly wiping off the pitching hand before it touches the ball. Again, if he does, have him throw the ball out. Don't give it to me. I don't want that nasty thing. Have him throw the ball out and give him a new baseball and give him a warning. You should be able to catch that before he engages the rubber. And this is another example of a rule where it says something in one spot and then it says something similar but different in another spot. So we're gonna get to that. Wearing any items on the hands or wrist or arms that may be distracting to the batter. Again, your judgment. If he's got something, the best practice is just, when a pitcher goes out there, just make sure he doesn't have anything, any bracelets or anything on his hands. In college ball now we wear, every pitcher's using a pitch comm, so we just don't even worry about it. But the pitcher may have a little card, a play card, on his non-pitching hand or arm. By rule, it can have a flap over it, and that that covers up the writing, or if it doesn't have a flap, the paper cannot be white. It can be a yellow piece of paper, it can be red, it can be whatever, but it can't be white. Again, it's your judgment whether something is distracting or not. If the batter's he's got that on there, it's distracting. It ain't bothering me. Come on, if you're looking at that, you're looking at the wrong thing, dude. Let's go. Swing the bat. You struck out in your first 3 at bats. I have no doubt that you're going to strike out again this time. Come on. All right. Wearing or placing tape, bandages, or other foreign material on the fingers or palm of the pitching hand that could come in contact with the ball. So, if the pitcher has a blister, I'm sorry, you probably don't need to be pitching. You can't have a Band-Aid. You can't have tape on your fingers. He can't have anything on his hands, if he's pitching. Wearing a glove or mitt that includes the colors white or gray. Now, I'm going to tell you just for education purposes, but this is totally a booger. Every other rule set says exclusive of piping. High school rules do not say exclusive of piping. The piping is that 1/16 of an inch piece of leather that sometimes goes up, but the middle of the fingers on the outside of the glove. I'm not picking that booger. It is technically illegal, but that's not bothering anybody. But technically, cannot have a glove that includes the colors white or gray. Just doesn't say exclusive of piping. I wish it would, but anyway. Cannot wear exposed undershirt sleeves that are white or gray. All right. Now, we have a note here says that he can use rosin bag for his hands. He cannot put rosin on the ball. He can get rosin on his hands, and then obviously he's going to pick up the ball, but he can't take the rosin bag and smack it on the baseball. All right, so the penalty for defacing the ball, so A through D, the ball is dead immediately. The umpire may eject the pitcher. If such defaced ball is pitched and then detected, it's an illegal pitch. For infraction E, which is bringing the hand to the mouth, a ball shall be awarded each time a pitcher violates this rule and subsequently engages the pitching plate. So see, it's a little different than the rule up there in E. So, it's illegal for him to bring his pitching hand in contact with the mouth without distinctly wiping it off and then touching the ball. But it's not there's not a penalty for it unless he licks his fingers, goes to the ball, and then engages the rubber. So if you can be quick enough, as soon as you see him go from his mouth to the ball, call time before he gets on the rubber. If he does it while he's on the rubber, it's a balk either way, because in high school rules, you can't bring your hand to your mouth. The rationale is stupid. They say it's because it simulates his pitching motion. I don't know anybody who pitches by bringing their hand to their mouth, but that's how they justify it. All right, F through I, the infraction just must be corrected before the next pitch. That's having something on his hands or wrist, having tape or bandages on his hand, having a glove that's white or gray, or wearing exposed undershirt sleeves. So there's no penalty for those. It's just correct it before the next pitch. So in F, the umpire has sole authority to judge whether or not an item is distracting and shall have that item removed. So even reiterates right there, it's your judgment. That's the thing about having anything on his hands or wrist that would be distracting. I mean, I don't find many things distracting. So suck it up, batter. Swing the bat. All right. Moving on to 622B. Consuming time as a result of the coach or team's non-playing representative by conferring with a defensive player or players after being charged with 3 conferences. So, if the coach goes out, he's already used his 3 conferences, and he goes out there, and you're assuming he's going to change the pitcher, and he goes out there and talks to him, and then turns around and starts heading back to the dugout. So, sorry, coach, that was your 4th visit. You've got to replace him. It doesn't matter who he talks to. 99.999% of the time, he's going to be going to the mound. But if he's used all 3 of his visits, charge conferences, and goes out and talks to the second baseman, that's a violation that is also going to require the removal of the pitcher. You don't remove the second baseman, you remove the pitcher. That's just who they decided to pick on. It says the penalty: the pitcher shall be replaced as pitcher for the duration of the game. Now, this next rule, I wish we would get. Honestly, I wish we would adopt the college rule, but because the way this is worded, it's almost unusable. But failing to pitch or make or attempt a play, including a legal feint, within 20 seconds after the pitcher has received the ball. The penalty was the batter shall be awarded a ball. Well, all he has to do is a legal feint. If he steps off and looks over at the at first base, it starts the clock over. It's not a well-written rule. But let's look at our casebook, page 51A. With no runners on base, starts his windup or preliminary motion, and the ball slips from his hand. That's the one we read already. If he pitches it within 20 seconds. We're not going over that again. So note, umpires shall require the ball to be returned promptly to the pitcher. So the catcher can't just sit there and hold it and monkey around. But if they strike a guy out and they want to throw the ball around, don't pick that booger. That's just a normal baseball thing, and there's usually another batter walking up at that point anyway, so you're not really losing any time. All right, so the starting pitchers can warm up with 8 throws completed in 1 minute from the first throw. A returning pitcher can use 5 throws in 1 minute, timed from the 3rd out of the previous half inning. A relief pitcher is a new pitcher. So starting pitcher and relief pitchers get 8 throws, and these are throws. So if he's throwing to the second baseman, that counts as one of his 8 throws. The thing to remember is if he gets 8, it's timed from the regardless of whether he's starter or returning pitcher. If it's 8 throws, it's timed from his first throw. If it's 5 throws, it's timed from the end of the previous inning, which was the 3rd out, or a previous half inning. You can authorize more throws because of an injury, ejection, or inclement weather. That's entirely up to you. Pitcher shall not intentionally pitch close to a batter. In other words, can't throw at him. The penalty is he shall be ejected if the act is judged to be intentional. Doesn't say may, it says shall. If you think that he did it on purpose, you must eject. In case of doubt, the umpire may first warn the batter. So notice the action words there. If you have doubt, you may first warn the batter, or you can eject him. But if you think that he did it intentionally, you shall eject him. You have no option but to eject. Um, all right. So Article 4, balks. Yay. Uh, a balk is an illegal act by a pitcher with a runner or runners on base, which entitles all runners to advance one base. Uh, so any feinting toward the batter or first base, or any dropping of the ball, so even though accidental and the ball does not cross the foul line. So dropping the ball means it left his hand. So if it slips out of his hand and he reaches down and grabs it before it hits the ground, that was still a drop ball. That is still a balk, assuming that there's runners on. Failing to step with the non-pivot foot directly toward a base, again, not the fielder, toward the base, whether it's occupied or unoccupied. We'll get to throwing an unoccupied base in a second. When throwing or feigting there in an attempt to put out or drive back a runner, or throwing or feigting to an unoccupied base when it is not an attempt to put out or drive back a runner. So you'll have this a lot. Runner's on second. He goes. Pitcher, everybody yells, he's going. Pitcher looks up, steps towards third, throws to third, and the offensive coach wants a balk because he threw to an unoccupied base. Well, it was unoccupied, but the second part of that rule that they always like to ignore is when it is not an attempt to put out or drive back a runner. So as long as the runner was going, or at least gave you and the pitcher a clear indication that he was going, because if he goes halfway and he sees the pitcher step and throw to third, and he stops and turns around and goes back to second, that was a legitimate attempt to drive back the runner, because remember that says, or drive back a runner. If he took like a hard step and then went back to his regular leadoff and the pitcher threw over there, I'm going to get that balk, because there wasn't a legitimate belief that the runner was going. He just panicked. All right, so making an illegal pitch from any position. So we already talked about the things that were illegal pitches. We won't go into those again. D, failing to pitch to the batter in a continuous motion immediately after any movement of any part of the body, such as the pitcher habitually uses in the delivery. So, in other words, from the time of the pitch, if he starts his motion and then stops and he's falling forward and then throws anyway, that's a balk. That wasn't a continuous motion. I mean, he might have been moving, but it just grab the balk and move on. If the pitcher with a runner on base stops or hesitates in a delivery because the batter steps out of the box with one foot or with both feet, or holds up a hand to request time, or even verbally ask for time, it shall not be a balk. The offense cannot cause a balk. If the batter does something, even if you don't grant it, if the pitcher starts his motion and the batter says time, and that causes the pitcher to stop, that's time. No, hey, don't do that again. Get back on the rubber and pitch. That is not a balk, because we're not going to let the offense cause a balk. So it just says the umpire shall call time and begin anew. If the batter steps out with both feet, a strike shall be called on the batter for violation of 731. We haven't gotten to 731 yet because we're in 6, but 731 says that the batter shall keep both feet in the box shall keep at least 1 foot in the box throughout his at bat unless one of 9 exceptions occurs. If the pitcher legally delivers the ball, it shall be called a strike. It shall be called a strike, regardless of where the pitch is. If the pitcher legally delivers the ball, it shall be called a strike, and the ball remains live. Thus, 2 strikes are called on the batter in B. That is if the batter steps out with both feet. All right. So if whether he steps out with both feet or not, if the pitcher, if he asks for time or whatever, and the pitcher delivers, then it shall be called a strike, and the ball remains live. Let me read that again. All right, so if the pitcher with a runner on base stops or hesitates in the delivery because the batter steps out of the box with 1 foot, or B, with both feet, or C, holds up a hand to request time, it shall not be a balk. In A and C, there is no penalty on either the batter or the pitcher. The umpire shall call time and begin play anew. In B, where he stepped out with both feet, a strike shall be called on the batter for violation of 731. In A, B, and C, if the pitcher legally delivers the ball, it shall be called a strike, and the ball remains live. Thus, 2 strikes are called on the batter in B. If the umpire judges the batter's action to be a deliberate attempt to create a balk, the batter will be penalized according to 331N. Now, what is 331N penalty? He gone. That's an ejection. If you deem that somebody's doing something for the purpose of causing a balk, they are ejected. So again, it doesn't matter how bad the pitch is, which you're going to probably get to practice your people skills. If the batter steps out with both feet, the pitcher tries to stop his motion and throws the ball to the backstop, and you come up not just with 1 strike on a very bad pitch, but 2 strikes for him stepping out of the box. And hopefully he had 1 strike on him already, so he's out. And then you're probably writing an ejection report on him or the coach or both. But that is where this is found. It's I wish it was in 731, but it's not. It's in 6.2D. Yeah. All right. E, taking a hand off the ball while in the set position, unless the pitcher pitches. Now, once he starts his motion, I see this come up as a question all the time, where the pitcher will start his motion, he's got his leg up, and he's pat, 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 throw. That is totally legal, because once he started his motion, he has committed himself to the plate. What he can't do is, before he starts his motion, he can't separate his hands. Unless that would be really weird mechanics. But if he separated and then lifted his foot, but I've never seen that. But just know that playing patty cake with the ball as part of his delivery is totally legal. All right. F, failing to pitch to the batter when the entire non-pivot foot passes behind the perpendicular plane of the back edge of the pitcher's plate, except when feigning or throwing to second base in an attempt to put out a runner. That's a lot of qualifiers there. So his entire non-pivot foot passes behind the back edge of the pitcher's plate. Most guys don't bring their foot that far back. So, I mean, a lot of coaches will think, well, his foot passed his back leg. Doesn't matter. His knee went past his back leg, and maybe his foot never even got back there. Doesn't matter. It's his entire foot going behind the back edge of the rubber. That's a pretty substantial leg kick there. All right, let's look at page 54P of the casebook. This is the only place that you will find this. It's not in the rule book. This is the gorilla balk. With the runner on first, Team A right-handed pitcher is in the set position, bent at the waist, and the pitching arm naturally hangs down slightly in front of or to the side away from the body. So far, he's good. As F1 looks to the catcher for a signal, A, the pitcher's arm is stationary, okay, or B, the pitching arm rocks from side to side. Ruling in A, the position of the arm is natural and can be considered by the side in meeting the rule. Any movement would then start the pitch. In B, any movement of the arm is considered the start of the pitching motion, and a pitch must be delivered to the plate, so this motion results in a balk. Again, this is called the gorilla balk. He's leaning forward. He's got his arm hanging there with the ball in it. It doesn't matter if the ball's in it or not. And he's rocking it back and forth. You can't see my arm. But he's rocking it back and forth. That's a balk, according to the case book. The problem is it's not in the rule book, and so most coaches don't even know it exists. All right, let's also look at, right before that, let's look at situation O. Runners on first and third. F1 is in contact with the pitcher's plate, but has not yet come set. F3 brings the pitching hand to his mouth and distinctly wipes it off. This is a balk. The pitcher cannot bring the hand to the mouth because the pitcher is required to go to the set position without interruption and in one continuous motion. All right, that's what I was telling you about earlier about if he goes to his mouth while on the rubber, that's a balk. And their rationale is that it simulates the pitching motion, which is asinine, but that's their rationale. All right, last one, Article 5. This is a rule that is different for all three rule sets. In high school baseball, it is a balk if a runner or runners are on base and the pitcher, while not touching the pitcher's plate, makes any movement naturally associated with the pitch, or the pitcher places the feet on or astride the pitcher's plate. And here's the key. Or takes a position within approximately 5 feet of the pitcher's plate without having the ball. That is only during a hidden ball trick. So he cannot be within 5 feet of the pitcher's plate because clearly he can't put his feet on or astride the rubber without having gotten within 5 feet of the rubber. So in a hidden ball trick, the pitcher cannot be within 5 feet of the pitcher's plate. Well, the dirt circle, the mound, is 18 feet wide. So you got 9 feet on each side of it. So roughly, the pitcher cannot be more than halfway up the mound towards the top of the mound during a hidden ball trick. Any other time, it's perfectly fine. But during a hidden ball trick, you got to look and see where is the rubber. Where is the pitcher? And I had a hidden ball trick in the state finals this past year. Would have been really nice if somebody had told me that this team apparently has done it many times, but I didn't get a heads up report on that. So we got together as a crew, and my question to the crew was, did anybody call time, and where was the pitcher? Because I was watching the guy get tagged. And when I was pretty confident that he was legal, because as soon as it happened, he immediately yelled to me, "I was in the grass." So, pretty sure, but I just wanted to confirm with my crew, make sure that nobody called time. So that is pitching. We finished just right on time. It is 8:30. Does anybody have any questions? Slade, what's up, buddy?
Yeah, I don't think you went over it. You kind of did. It's the definition of one continuous movement, and I know you and I have kind of seen it this year with one of those pitchers that our board sent around. When kids like hesitate with their non-pivot foot and they'll hold it still or they'll double pump it.
Right. The double pump is absolutely a balk, um, because once his foot goes down, he can't bring it back up. That is not a continuous movement. He broke his movement and came back up. So uh, the double pump is legal in professional baseball. It is illegal in college and high school baseball. So once he brings his foot up, it has to go down and out. It cannot stop and come back up again. Continuous motion, you'll see a guy might pause, but if there's anything still moving, then he's not in violation. But and rarely do they really come to an actual complete stop. But if it's close, if you're in doubt, grab it for a balk, because you know he's trying to gain an advantage there, and he'll stop. But if you clearly see that there's something still moving, then he's not in violation. If you don't, and if you're err on the side of saying that it's a balk, because he's trying to gain an advantage. Anybody else? All right, guys. Well, we will meet again.